Thank you for joining us today for Thrive London and Mayor of London's Peer Outreach Team World Mental Health Day Festival 2021. And thank you for joining this conversation. The first on today's Never Alone London Speak It event. I'm Javaun, a Mayor of London peer outreach worker and a boxer. I'm delighted to be at Rich Mix today and be joined by Amani Simpson. Amani is an award-winning social entrepreneur and a youth coach, as well as founder and CEO of Aviard Inspires. Was that pronounced right, bro? Yeah. It exists to empower young people through development, digital media, and enrichment. Something we will touch on during this discussion. For this Never Alone London conversation, we will start by asking the question, how can we support young men to open up more and talk about how they're feeling? We all know how important this topic is. We all will be coming to the floor to ask your thoughts and views throughout the discussion. If you would like to contribute, just raise your hand and we'll find you a microphone. And wherever you are watching this conversation from, you can join the conversation through social media and use the hashtag NeverAloneLondon. Let me begin by welcoming Amani and allowing him to introduce himself.
I mean, you did a good job there, to be fair. So my name's Amani Simpson. I'm a filmmaker, a youth coach, entrepreneur. I produced a short film about my life called Amani, which starred Javaun Bance. So when I was 21, I got stabbed 7 times and created a film about it, and it did well. It had a really big impact. Did 1 million views in 4 days, and we've just hit 3.5 million views. It's allowed me to go up and down the country and do a couple of international talks, just sharing my story. And I think in line with what we're talking about today, when I was growing up, I didn't really talk about how I felt. And so the film was a really kind of, it was a great tool to kind of be able to share my thoughts. And essentially it's a prayer or a reflection, the way the movie plays out. But yeah, I love storytelling and giving young people a platform to kind of talk about how they feel and, level up for the future. So that, I mean, there's loads of things that I do, but in relation to today, that's yeah.
Well, that's amazing, bro. That's the kind of stuff we like to see from people in our community that really do care and are pushing for better things. So that's amazing to hear, bro.
Thank you.
I think I'd just like to start with some questions now, bro.
Yeah, man. I love questions.
So how do you feel, as a young male, your mental health journey has been growing up as a young Londoner?
Ah, man, do you know what? I think when I was younger, I didn't really have an understanding of what mental health was. So a lot of the things that I guess I struggled with when I was younger, I just kind of like absorbed them and compressed them and kind of walked around with a lot of pressure on my shoulders, and that affected my relationships and how I handled situations, etc. And as I've got older, I've become more self-aware. I've learned about emotional intelligence and therapy and all of these other different things. And so now as an adult, I probably don't have some of the same issues that I had. Well, I don't have some of the same issues I had as a teenager and as a child. But now that I'm more aware, I'm kind of in a place where I now go and talk things out. Like I've had therapy recently, or I'll talk things out with my wife or my mentors, etc. Because when I was young, I didn't know that that was available to me. So it's been a journey, just learning that these things are available to young people, especially young black boys from London. Like just it's available, and just being, I guess, open to exploring those things and trying to learn more about yourself as you get older. That's been the journey.
All right, thank you, boss. So kind of to develop on that as well, what do you feel like could have maybe supported you further? Because I know you did briefly mention therapy, etc. But do you feel there was anything else or anything more that could have supported you?
Yeah, I think my parents, being Caribbean or just generally, I think they didn't really understand. Mental health wasn't part of their conversation as well. So even when I talk to my parents now as adults, there was a lot of things that they probably should have sought therapy for, but didn't talk to anyone about it. And so I think if they had been empowered from their generation and as they got older to say, let's go and do therapy, not just because or let's talk things out, not just because there's necessarily like a massive issue, but just because you're gradually feeling that you're not okay. I think it would have empowered me as a child to then say, actually, there's a safe space in my house to talk out how you're feeling. I think also with my parents that because they were grinding, they were trying to build for, provide and stuff. They were quite busy at times. And so maybe they weren't always as present as they would have loved to be, and that being present for your child is important, because I got bullied in school, for example, and coming home from school, my mum was trying to deal with, I need to, raise you and provide, etc. And then let's deal with the emotional side, and probably did more of the let's build the household than the emotional side at times. So I think that probably would have helped. But yeah, and also the school system, I think as well, like the school system's really changed now. Now you've got pastoral care and stuff like that. When I was growing up, you never really had that. It was, you're the naughty child, and especially in primary school, your teacher follows you all the way through school. And so I never really got a chance to reinvent myself. No one really gave me a different narrative. So all the way through school, I'm just bad. You're the bad child, you're naughty, and I just owned it. So I think having someone else kind of give me a new slate, which is what I got when I was 16 and, I got older, that would have probably definitely helped me, for sure. Yeah.
No, 100%, bro. I fully hear you. I feel like that can obviously happen when there's better things, in the sense that your parents need to provide for you, etc. And in that, you can kind of get lost in the other things that are needed support for as well, and even in terms of community. So in regards to your being the CEO and the founder of Aviard, how important do you feel organizations like this are needed in communities to provide that community presence?
Yeah, definitely. That my organization is one of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of organizations in the UK that do great work, and each of us are kind of playing a particular role, and we have to be part of the joint approach that goes into helping a young person to elevate and to know themselves and to seek opportunities and progress, etc. And essentially kind of learn who they are. So it's very important, because there's no way that one organization can solve the problems of every young person, and each organization is going to have a different perspective, a different kind of way of delivering what they do. And that's why it's important for us to know that person does that person does that, young person is in the center of it, and you're just constantly trying to pathway young people to different things. Someone might want to work with me because I make films, but then there may be another organization, like you were saying before about boxing. Maybe the young person's not into films or boxing, and so we go to someone else's. And I think that's where all these organizations like this, it's amazing the work that's going on, and it just needs to be funded multi-year. It can't just be one-off. And we need sustainable business models that allow us to kind of keep doing this for young people, so that they aren't kind of let down when we don't have funding for years to come,
100%, bro. I don't think you could have said it better. I think you need varieties. Not everyone likes the same thing, so young people need options, and they need to try to learn things and try things, and if they don't like them, given more options, and
100%.
There's not enough of them out there nowadays. So just to develop a bit more on being the CEO of Aviard, what barriers would you say you currently face, or you feel you will face in the future with that organisation?
Do you know what?
Work you do?
To be honest, one of the biggest barriers is self-belief. A lot of the time, you can sometimes have imposter syndrome when you have ideas and stuff. And like, for example, I just wrote my first short film and directed my first short film, which was commissioned by Enfield Council. It's going to come out in a few months. And at the beginning of the process, I was like, I've produced previously, so I'm just going to produce. I'm just going to, it's all right. And then I kind of opportunity opened up for me to direct it and write it. And I just kind of slowly talked myself out of it. And then after a while, I had this writer that kind of wasn't really fully getting what I wanted to do. And I was like, let me try it. And in the process of trying it, now I can say I'm a writer, a director. And I think that initial kind of doubt that you can sometimes have in yourself as a CEO or just as a visionary creative is the thing that you have to overcome. There's other barriers, there's systemic things, there's financial things, there's, problem solving stuff. But fundamentally, if you believe in yourself, then you'll be resilient and push through, or you'll learn to be resilient and push through these things. So yeah, I think that was my biggest hurdle. And it's a daily battle, growing up. And I always say to people, I didn't grow up with a lot of praise or accolades. I got kicked out of school, left with basically no GCSEs. I didn't care. So now to have the complete polar opposite of that, where almost everything you do has some kind of level of success or impact, you can sometimes continue to play on, why are you here? So you're learning to, again, change your own internal narrative. That's a big battle as a CEO, especially from my walk of life.
Yeah, no, definitely, bro. See, you come across, and you definitely are someone that's overcome a lot in your life in terms of challenges, etc. So as a life coach for young people and people that are in need, how do you tell them how to overcome their challenges themselves?
That's a great question. I think fundamentally, each young person is their individual. So as a coach, you never want to tell them to do anything. You help them to find the answer. I would say if you've got the problem, you've always got the solution, normally. Yeah, and we just help you to kind of work through it. So when I talk to a young person, it's usually, this is the situation, and then somewhere within the conversation, you ask them what they would like the outcome to be. And then essentially you kind of help to move them towards that by the questions that you ask them, for them to kind of have that self-realization that, oh yeah, actually I could ask that person, or I haven't tried that option, or maybe I should wake up earlier or stop hanging around with that person. So I don't really tell them anything. I just prompt. I just ask questions, and I'm not afraid to be real, because I think a lot of the time people can live in a land that is quite, it's very optimistic, which is good, but sometimes you need like reality. And if you say, for example, and this is no disrespect to anyone watching this, but if you say, for example, you're 21 and you want to be a professional footballer, it's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely, because you should have started at a particular stage. And so someone needs to come and say, look, bro, like maybe that's not your route, but if you really are into football, then have you thought about coaching? Or have you thought about becoming a referee or whatever? Do you see what I'm saying? So I try not to be the one to lead a young person. I just ask questions that get them to think about stuff.
Oh, that's wicked, bro. So how would you, obviously, because we're aware, obviously, we started a conversation with this, that men do struggle to speak out about mental health, etc., and on their own feelings, emotions. So how do you personally go about this when you are speaking one-to-one with your own people, or your people in general, your male friends in general, about just feeling like it's okay to open up? How can we overcome that challenge specifically, you know?
Do you know what? I think it's about vulnerability. So I try to make that one of my values, or one of the things that I kind of bring to the world. Like, it's about being vulnerable. Like, at the same time, you've got to be careful who you tell information and what you say. But I'll try and, like, especially what I find is that when I go in to do a talk in a school, for example, when I've basically kind of bared my soul on screen in the film or in my presentation, usually you'll get a young person come up to you after and say, you really spoke to me. I want to tell you everything now. And then in which case you have to kind of say, well, I'm not here every day. Here's a safeguarding lead, etc. But in that time, what I find is being vulnerable is what helps the young person to say, okay, it's all right to talk, because this person I've got some kind of respect for, they've achieved a certain thing, and they're here telling me about their mistakes or about their feelings, that maybe it's all right for me to talk about it. And so I think we need more spaces like that. And I think, like, for example, the other day I posted a video, I think even last Thursday or Friday on Instagram, where I was just saying, like, I've been in a season where I've had lots of different hurdles that I've had to overcome. And as a man, like, that is usually, I've been on a good path for a few years, that's draining. Like, my endurance, like, it's starting to affect the way that I think about things. And I want to be honest, because I know that, yes, my future is, there's certain things in the pipeline that I know are going to be a blessing, but to some people, you need to see that. Don't just always show the nice stuff. Sometimes you need to see there's a bit of a struggle attached to this journey, and every day isn't just, you're meeting this person and this achievement and this talk and that. So that vulnerability is really important, I think, when you're trying to open that space for a young person to be honest about how they feel.
Thank you, bro. That was a great answer. If you don't mind, this just popped in my head, and it is a personal question in reference to something you referenced earlier, in terms of when you've been stabbed. So what would you say, and how, you may have obviously experienced this with young people you've worked with before, I'm pretty sure, but how do you recommend young people to themselves recover from those kind of situations in terms of traumatically, and find the best ways to deal with them rather than making maybe wrong decisions and building bad habits off those experiences?
Man, that's a great question. Every young person is different. When I got stabbed, I was attacked. It was, I wasn't in a gang or anything like that. And my process was difficult for me. I suffered with PTSD and depression, anxiety, etc., and all these other different things that were going on in my world. A young person that may be involved in gang life, and sorry, let me caveat that. I also thought about retaliation. My family, we were thinking, and my family aren't from that life, but I'm the only son, and my family are angry. So you think about it. So I can only imagine a young person that has been spending the last 4 or 5 years of their life rolling around with the man them, growing up with certain people, and then they get stabbed, and then you're trying to tell me don't ride out on my man. That is, I can only imagine. Because the only reason I said I don't want to do it is because it would mean I'm stepping into their world. If you're already in that world, it's difficult. I feel like in those moments, it's down to the family to be positive influences on them. What helped me was to isolate myself and to limit the amount of voices that were in my head, because I think I had to make a very strong conscious choice that, yeah, people are going to call me whatever they're going to call me, because I'm not going to try and find these boys and ride out on them. But, 10 years later, I'm happy, I'm at peace, no one's looking for me. Whereas if I'd gone and done something, I could have been in jail, I could have been dead, I could have had, people looking for me every day, right? So you need positive people around you. You need the space to think about things like objectively and kind of say, nah, actually, I'm alive. That's what I thought. I was like, I'm alive. I've got another chance. But as I said, I can only say that from my perspective. Young people, we just need, they need that positive influence. There's I think, is it Oasis that go into schools, into prison, into hospitals, I think, and they're in like crisis wards. So people like that, you need more of that going into like that moment of crisis, that moment where a young person is at a tipping point where they're actually thinking about their options. You need more people at that point, and that can actually give them tangible things in their hand. Because otherwise, we know that it just comes like, tit for tat, and it's long. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, great answer, bro. Thank you. So, yeah, just to take a quick step back as well. In regards to mental health, when do you feel like this conversation should start being had with young people?
That should be like, that's primary school, man. Like, I think just even things like emotional intelligence, like there's studies that talk about the value of emotional intelligence from as very, very young. So I think that primary schools should be empowered with more resources to start these conversations early, because then that's embedded into the foundation of that young person, that they know it's okay to talk about things. If something happens at home, then they feel like, actually, do you know what? I can go to my teacher, or this is the designated safeguarding lead, or whatever. You need that kind of embedded into young people, and then it makes it easier as they get older, in my opinion, for them to become more open. I think if you're older and you haven't really had that as part of your life, then it's completely alien to talk about your feelings. Right? I know it was a big struggle for me, even when you get into relationships, to talk to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever about how you feel. If you're not used to that at home, then being in a relationship, you kind of just say, nah, I'm upset. And I used to have this kind of like this emergency self-protection button when I'd get annoyed with my partner, press that button rather than talking about it. But that doesn't help me to move forward. So it needs to be from young. Needs to be.
So in addition to that, saying that, would you go as far as saying it should be included in the actual education system?
100%. But whether that happens or not is a different issue. I think, you have a... you've got an education system that is, in my opinion, quite archaic. It's not fit for purpose all the time. And you've almost got this kind of one-size-fits-all approach to young people, which isn't really fair to them. And it's setting up a lot of young people to fail. So there is a complete overhaul, in my opinion, of things that need to happen in the education system. But in my opinion, I don't know if that's going to happen in my lifetime. And so therefore, that's why, back to your original question, that's why you need organizations that are doing extracurricular activities and getting the support from school and local authority, because top down, unfortunately, I don't know how easy it's going to be to change these things, being honest.
So yeah, just to kind of finish off a little bit as well, back to into regards to your organisation, Aviard, as well, how would you say you are going about currently and figuring out, obviously calculating, filling in these gaps, in terms of the support that's needed and the people and the spaces that are needed in the right spaces,
Yeah, I'm just trying to collaborate, because, as I said, I said it to you off before we started, it takes a village to raise a child, but a community to raise a generation. And I feel like I'm only one part of that. It's important. Like, for example, when a young person that follows me, if they don't know anything about mental health, here's an organization. For me to just be like, oh no, you need to come to me for everything. Number one, that's self-centered, that's selfish, and it's short-sighted. So I'm just trying to collaborate and feature on as many platforms as I can, Some of the work that I've got coming up is going to collaborate with big organizations that have massive reach. So I'm doing a project right now with Goldman Sachs, which is essentially, working with young people that are deserving of a second chance. It's not about getting them a job at Goldman Sachs. It's about showing them that, your future can be bright and just moving the needle slightly. And I think that there's loads more opportunities to do that. I'm just one person. I'm blessed that I've had a story that has reached millions of people, but I can't live on that. I've got to keep going. I've got lives to be part of. I've got to be part of the solution. I've got lives to try and help save. So, yeah, it's all about working together, man. Yeah.
Thank you for that, bro. So sadly, I think that is all we have time for right now, and we're at the end of what has been a really deep and powerful conversation, and I appreciate that, bro. That was great.
Thank you for
all the
having me,
questions
man.
were answered real well. Amani, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your valuable thoughts and insights with us today for Never Alone London Speak It.
Thank you.
So I think we're gonna open up to a Q&A for the audience. So if anyone in the audience has any questions regarding our conversation to Amani or myself, feel free to ask. So raise your hand if you've got a question.
Cool.
No questions, no one, not one question?
Where can we find your film?
It's on YouTube. Just type my name, Amani, in YouTube. It'll come up. I think it's one of the first links. The next film that I've just directed is called Save Me. So there'll be a big campaign for that probably in the new year. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. I know this was kind of answered before, but like, if someone's watching this and feels kind of inspired to speak out, to voice how they're feeling, what kind of like one line advice would you guys give? Both of you.
Are you ready? Or do you want to go first?
Cool.
What would I say? I think it depends on where they are in their life. I think if they're at school, then school has particular frameworks in place. You've got your safeguarding leads, etc., teachers and stuff you can reach out to directly. If they're on road, maybe youth worker. I would always say, even if you're on road, I think there's usually someone that has probably crossed paths with you that's trying to be a positive influence. Usually, I'd say. So just, I guess, tapping into that support that's kind of been offered to you. Yeah, I think. Trying to think in any other scenario. There's loads of like you've got your child lines, you've got all of these massive national charities and things like that. I think it's just it's more awareness that young people just need to know that there are X amount of different options, and sometimes there's local things, sometimes there's national. I think it's just trying to reach out, if that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in response to that, I think I'd say, as you said, I think young people can be in different situations, but I think in terms of one of the main things that's the same is you need to focus on yourself and really remember what your priorities are and who you are as a person. If you really know yourself, I think, regardless of the situation you're in, I think in life you can get lost sometimes in what's going on around you, regardless of what it is, whether it's negative, whether it's positive, whether it's something else. You just need to remember your priorities and sticking to your pathway and making sure that path's nice and clear. So yeah, that's what I'd say to them.
And just to add to that as well, thank you, bro. You just reminded me of something. It always boils down to the young person making a decision. I can only talk from my perspective, but I know that I had loads of different people trying to help me, and or I say loads of people, but there was a number of people that probably tried to, and I wasn't ready. So it comes from that personal commitment to yourself to say, I want to have a brighter future, I want to do something else, because that's the only thing that's going to allow a young person to stay committed to the journey. And I think the other thing that I always say is, if your mind can go there, your feet will follow. So it's important for you to have a vision of where you want to go, where you want to head, what that looks like. And then it's like a sat-nav. You set your destination, and then you kind of work out how to get there. I think that's what it boils down to a lot of the time. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Has anyone else got any questions?
Christian.
I can ask one if there is one.
Mark's got one there.
So they say, obviously, the phrasing goes, a problem shared is a problem halved. But for a lot of young men, and bringing it back to young men, because this was the topic of the conversation, it's more actually, I'm going to keep this problem to myself and solve it myself. How do we shift that stigma? Like, what is it that we need to do to make young men feel confident in sharing their problems?
It's a really good question. I think it's role modeling. I think it's older men showing that process. So again, that's one of the reasons why I tried to be vulnerable on my Insta the other day, because I didn't want to. I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to keep it in house, and no one needs to. I'll just show all the shiny stuff, right? But especially with World Mental Health Day coming up, it was just like I felt I needed to do that. And I've had a couple of young men that have messaged me and say, bro, like, I felt like that last year, or I feel like that now, and thank you for sharing that. And so I think you have to role model it. You have to kind of lead from the front, or kind of, just show that this is what happens when you because now I can show a pathway. I can show the day that I felt kind of low. You can see that, and then I can show you, oh yeah, this is what happens when your film comes out, and when you are busy and whatever. It's a journey. So I think you have to role model it, essentially.
Yeah, just to bounce off that, I think you explained that perfectly. I think it's about older men really setting that example, in the sense of, if there's someone you do look up to as an older man and you see them opening up to an extent about things, you're going to think, wow, this is real life. This is how a man should behave. This is how we should be dealing with these kind of situations. So just to bounce off that, I think, yeah.
And we are the generation to do it. We are the ones, because we're having conversations like this. I don't know if my parents and, your parents, I don't know if this space was available before. So we are the generation that when our kids grow up, mental health will be a staple of the household, because we have been through a pandemic, and mental health has been one of the biggest conversations that has come out of this thing. So there's hope, for sure. Definitely hope. But it's up to us to keep up momentum, to keep making it like embedded into society, and allowing people to say, I'm not feeling okay today, and not kind of stigmatizing them for that, and being kind. I know there's a hashtag be kind. Like, there's I wish when I was growing up, be kind was the hashtag. I wish we had that, because it would have people, maybe some of my peers that really, really struggled would have been saved.
Thank you, everyone. Have we got any other questions?
So just to follow on from the awesome question just before, trying to turn it the other way slightly. So people that work with young people, slightly worried about potentially they're not themselves. How would you recommend people start the conversation to check up on these people, to see if they do want the support? Because obviously, as we've been discussing here, someone taking the first step is obviously the hardest. Any advice from experience how you can help open people up and just say, look, if you need help, I'm here for you. Like,
yeah, I think it goes back to what I said before about vulnerability. I think within reason, especially teachers, youth workers, I think sharing an element of your own journey to kind of say, this is some of the things that I've struggled with in an environment that, again, you're not sharing your whole business with a young person, but again, back to role modeling and being vulnerable is those things that if a young person can see that you as someone that I look up to doesn't always have things okay, like things are not always all right, I think that can help them to open up. Again, it has to be done in moderation and safely and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's the kind of foundation of it. That's how you open up for young people to be to talk about how they feel, basically.
Yeah, thank you, 100%. I think that you've answered that perfectly, if I'm entirely honest with you, bro. I think that's one of the best ways you can really get a young person or someone that does look up to you or has some confidence in you to open up to you, is to share some of your own experience in that same way, because it shows them they can be comfortable having that conversation with you.
And also getting other young people in the room as well. I think adults do this thing where we kind of like talk at young people a lot of the time. What's amazing about organizations like this is like, you're a young person interviewing me. Do you know how many times I've been to a place, it's like, yeah, well, you focused, and it's an older person talking to me. It's just like, let's have conversations, because us as young, well, I'm not as young anymore, but young people in general, we we have voices. And there's this phrase that I learned a little while ago called adulting or adultism. Yeah, adultism. And it's just talking about how adults essentially will talk at children and, you know, how we kind of define what children should be doing. But I think do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think the more that you literally hand young people the mic and say, what do you think? How should this situation be framed? You know, even just giving them the space to kind of co-design, you know, that's what, you know, I know the peer outreach team, they do that. Like, even giving space to just co-design things really allows a young person to build that confidence and to open up and to have other peers that you know that you can go to. So that's, you guys are doing it, you're modeling it. So, yeah.
Well, I think if we have no further questions.
Just one to close us with. Just wondering, really great conversation, but how much of it is around language as well? We're particularly thinking about men's mental health. We talked a lot here, obviously, about mental health, but stuff like mental fitness or things like that. Do you think that makes a difference, particularly for young men?
Yeah, I mean, I can only say from my perspective, I think the more I started to understand that there were other terms and that mental health wasn't necessarily just a bad word. Like, you know, there's other words to describe mental, as you said, fitness or mental hygiene, I've heard recently. All of these different things that, yeah, okay, they may be like buzzwords and, you know, but essentially the more you kind of give a wide scope of how you can describe this thing and how you're feeling, I think it opens it up for people to understand it, because some people might have a stigma attached to talking about their mental health. But if you can give someone tips to, you know, like, again, I say mental hygiene, you say to someone, you know, on a day-to-day basis, doing affirmations or writing a gratitude list will help you to kind of metaphorically clean your mind and give you something positive to think about. That might make someone say, oh, I'll try that, you know? So I think you just got to have different ways to really kind of reach young people, different strings to your bow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in regards to that, I think, in my opinion, I don't think, in certain language aspects, I would say it makes sense, but not too much, because I say when it comes to anything that in relation to men and relates to weakness, in terms of a man being weak, is going to have a stigma attached to it regardless of the way it's said. So I would say it's more about dealing with that problem at the core rather than the language.
That's a society thing, isn't it? That society has built us up to think that men shouldn't cry and, you know, we can't be weak and stuff. But, like, men cry. Know that. We do cry.
I got a question for both of you guys.
And this
right here, I'm holding the camera as well. When was your last bad day, and how did you get out of it?
Do you know, it's a great question. Today is a bad day. Today is a bad day. Before I came here, I got some bad news, and I have to deal with that, because that's what happens in life. You deal with it, and again, you know, it's not to say that I can't have conversations, but there's probably people in this room that have had a bad day this morning, that have woken up and life has been long. But you get on. So I know, like, for example, on the way here, I called my dad, and I spoke to my dad, and I said, Dad, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on in my mind right now. And it's back to what we're saying. Like, my dad has given me the space to talk it out and has encouraged me. And so I'm able to now sit here and say, cool. But as soon as I switch off this camera and go, I've then got to flip my mind back into that situation. So it happens on a day-to-day basis. And it's important to be honest, because I could very easily sit here and say, yeah, life's good, let's talk about movies and all of that. But I don't know whose life in here is impacted. I don't know who needed to hear the fact that I've just said I've had a bad day today, right? So if you're having a bad day, please talk it out.
Yeah, I'd think to myself, I'd say last time I had a bad day could have been probably sometime last week. Could have been any day of the week. I think everyone has a bad day here and there, but I think I'd say the way I'd deal with it is I'd wake up and try to just make myself aware of how I'm feeling, just to make sure I'm not putting that onto anyone else, that energy that I've got in that moment. I'd think about that, and then I'd speak to my dad, I'd speak to my family, and just try to just stay in my own zone where I can ease out how I'm feeling and just settle a little bit. But you have to deal with it if it's there, you know what I mean? It's not like you can hide with it. You have to just deal with the situation and the way you're feeling in that moment and accept it.
100%. And one of the worst things, as you said, is to put things in the closet. Like, it's very easy for us just to put it in the closet and say, I'm going to deal with it later. And before you know it, your closet's overflowing with all these skeletons and bad things. Like, you got to put them on the bed and say, look, I don't need that anymore. That's what I had to do earlier this year with, like, in lockdown. I had to say, I'm feeling certain things from childhood. Like, I'm an adult. Like, I'm I don't need to feel that anymore. Let me actively go and do something about it. Otherwise, you know, when I become a father or I'm married now, for example, these things will play out. It's not good to continue these generational curses and feelings from young. You've got to talk it out. You've got to try and heal from these things, you know.
That's it, 100%, 100%. So just to close, thank you everyone for all the questions. I think we've had a great conversation. Thank you, bro.
Thank you, man.
We've had a great conversation, man. I think I'll shake it. Thank you, man. Nice to meet you, yeah?
Thanks for having me.